Okay, so my name is Bill Hamlen, and I've met a few of you, but I haven't met most of you, so I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I come from a middle-class family. My father was a chemist, my mother was a nurse, I was raised Catholic, I was an altar boy, and I'm also an Eagle Scout. Are there any Eagle Scouts in our crowd? There's usually one or two, and they're all usually Republicans. So in high school, my first real job was working on a farm. I worked on a farm. We had about 60 cattle on the farm, and there were 2 horses. I learned how to bale hay and how to drive tractors. I shoveled a lot of manure. It was really hard work, but that's where I learned the value of hard work, the value that I share with the people of New Hampshire. In high school, I also heard about a college that had the best outing club in the country, and that was Dartmouth College, and I was lucky enough to get in. So at age 18, I packed my bags and I headed to the Upper Valley, and I just fell in love with New Hampshire. It's as simple as that, and that's really why I'm here today. After college, I headed to Manhattan, where I met my wife, Rowena. We've been married 28 years. We've got 2 lovely daughters. One of them is here tonight with me. And, Dartmouth's motto is that Dartmouth is the base camp to the world. And for me, this actually rings true, because I left base camp, I traveled the world, lived the American dream, met my wife, had a career. And when it was time to settle down, I came back to base camp. And so a little bit about my career. At Dartmouth, I studied economics. I took a course in agribusiness, and as a result of that, I ended up with a job at a grain firm for an internship, actually. That led to a career in energy trading. That's where the growth was at the time. And so I spent 30 years basically trading energy products around the world. I'm about as opposite of a lawyer as you could get. And when I'm with Democrats, I say I'm an energy trader. When I'm with Republicans, I'm not afraid to say I'm an oil trader, or that was my career. And what I loved about that is it gave me a unique set of skills that I think right now I look forward to taking my skills to Washington to help bring down the price of energy and bring down inflation. I've got a unique set of skills that at this particular point in time, I think I've got a lot to offer in that respect. So now, why am I running? Well, it's very simple. I think our nation is heading in the wrong direction. We've got open borders, we've got the worst inflation since the 1970s, and we've got rising crime. Right now, there's many cities in our country where it's easier to be a criminal than it is to be a cop. We've got politicians, they fly around the world in their private jets, they come back here and they tell us that we need to get rid of our gas stoves. They want to tell us what cars to drive, they want to tell us what food to eat. Our very way of life is under attack. To make matters worse, the Democrats, Joe Biden is spending money like a drunken sailor. Milton Friedman once said, "Never in the history of mankind has inflation been caused by consumer spending. It has always been caused by government overspending or the printing of money, and right now we have both." The Democrats will tell you inflation is falling, everything's under control. Well, the price of living hasn't come off. In New Hampshire, the average family is spending $1,000 more now per month than you were before Joe Biden came into office. The price of the average McDonald's meal over the last 4 years is up 141%. They tell you that prices are only up 20 to 25%, but those numbers are rigged. When you look at something like a McDonald's meal, that's where you get a sense of the real cost of things. Things are up, it's a lot worse than they report. Now, I don't know if you saw the jobs report this last week. They talk about lying. I've got a friend who's an economist. He says they're lying. They lie with the upfront numbers, and then they secretly do revisions. Well, so this week, the unemployment was 800,000 people worse than they reported. They will lie. We learned it during the pandemic. They'll lie about everything. They lie about our statistics. They lie about unemployment. Things are actually worse right now than is being reported. I have another friend who's an economist, and he said the funny thing about inflation historically is that when it hits at first, there's a Goldilocks period where your IRA might be worth more, your paycheck might be worth more, your property might be worth more. And so it feels good, things are worth more. The problem is it takes a year or two to sink in that everything you spend money on is also costing even more. And that's where we are now. I think we're at the end of that Goldilocks period where people are beginning to come to terms with the true deep effects of inflation. Now, with regard to the border, does anyone remember when Kamala Harris was the border czar? Because they're trying to rewrite history right now. And we know they're lying. Again, she was the border czar. And I mean, when they started with these sanctuary cities, I think most Republicans thought, you know what, that's a dumb idea, but if their city, they can ruin it if they want to. Well, first they started with sanctuary cities, then they opened the borders, they brought in 10 to 20 million people, and now they want to give them the vote. They want to take away our nation. Well, I want to go to Washington. In 2016, Donald Trump didn't have enough support to build that wall. This time around, we're fighting for our lives. And this seat is flippable, and I want to go to Washington. I want to build the wall. If it takes bringing in 5 Army divisions, I would do it. I would do whatever it takes to secure that border. Another thing I would do is declare war on these cartels. You know, China is subsidizing the precursors that go into fentanyl. They ship them to Mexico. The triads are working with the Mexican cartels. It's coming across our border, and it's killing our young people. I read recently, more Americans have died since Joe Biden came into office than died during World War II. This is a direct result of his open border policies and Kamala Harris's open border policies. They are killing our children. I read recently in the Valley News that New Hampshire was once again ranked one of the top in the nation for quality of life. But we were falling behind on suicide and drug deaths and overdoses. It's killing our young people everywhere, even up here in New Hampshire. Now, did anyone watch the Olympics? Okay. Okay, I'm really excited about the issue of men in women's sports. In 2021, according to Gallup, 62% of Americans were against men competing in women's sports. By 2023, that number was up to 69%. 69% of Americans are against boys competing in women's sports. After the Olympics, I'm going to guess it's 71, 72, or 73%. It's one of the few issues where independents completely agree with Republicans. There is no other issue that unifies us as a nation. The Democrats, you know, it's funny, I saw Colin Van Austen and Maggie Goodlander on stage. They can't define what is a boy or what is a girl. If you ask them, they'll say, well, that's very complicated. Well, it isn't complicated to the 70% of Americans that want boys out of women's bathrooms, out of girls' bathrooms. My daughter, her team, had to go to the Ivy League championships. Izzy was the captain of her swim team and race against that boy from Penn. My wife and I were bullied into silence. We had to sit there in silence because if we did anything, they would take revenge on my daughter. And we attended this wonderful event with Riley Gaines, and my daughter shared with her what she went through, what our young people are going through. When we're not looking, that's what's happening in our schools. So we need to fight back, take back our nation, and save our schools. Now, I'll finish with a few thoughts to address what I think is the elephant in the room, and that is, as Republicans, we share a lot of similar views. Well, why should you vote for me? Well, let me start with a few simple things. Number one, I'm a common sense conservative that shares the values of the people of New Hampshire. I've been up and down this state. I've dragged my wife up Mount Moosilauke. I dragged her up Mount Smarts when we were dating. I took her camping in a cabin just to see if she could hack it, and she did. And I even dragged my daughter and our dog up Cube Mountain and Cardigan. Yeah, we went up Cardigan with the dog. And there's a picture of it on my website. So I share the values of the people in New Hampshire. I also have very articulated views on what we need to do with the border, how to bring down inflation, which is cut government spending. It's very simple. I would freeze the budget. Right from day one, I would advocate freezing it. That's how we get spending under control. And also, I would just add on that note, you know, in the late 1970s, we had similar inflation. We tackled it. Ronald Reagan came in, and by the mid-1990s, we had a balanced budget. So we faced problems like this before, and we've solved them, and this one, we can solve it again. The third thing is, and I'm not afraid to say this, I support President Trump. And if you ask me, you know, between 2016 and 2020, we were safer. There was no wars. We had low inflation. We had the best economy of my entire life. And we had the Abraham Accords. If Donald Trump was a Democrat, he would have gotten the Nobel Peace Prize for the Abraham Accords. Recently, when Iran attacked Israel, Jordan came to our aid. Saudi Arabia stood down, was silent. You know, Saudi Arabia is more worried about the middle class than they are worried about another endless war. Now, when Trump was president, he killed Soleimani, the head of the Iranian forces in Iraq. The Democrats said, you can't do that. That's gonna lead to another war. Well, he killed him and nothing happened. The Iranians were on the ropes. Since Joe Biden came into office, the Iranians have taken in $100 billion in extra revenue. And that revenue fuels the terrorists in Gaza, it fuels Hezbollah, it fuels the Houthis. So I'm a big supporter of President Trump, and I'm not afraid to say it. And the last thing, well, I'll end with two other things. One, I bring a life experience that's unique to this race. From working on a farm to trading oil, I bring a unique set of life skills that I think we need more of in Washington. And I can go help President Trump release American energy like nobody else in DC. You know who's on the House Energy Committee, Energy and Commerce Committee? Andy Custer. I guarantee you, I know a heck of a lot more about energy than Andy Custer ever did in his entire life. So the last thing I'll say is this, that we as Republicans, we're only about 30% of the state, 30 to 33%. We need to give the independents someone that they can believe in. This seat in CD2, since the American Revolution, 30 different people have held these seats. 21 of those 30 people were Republicans. You know, and I'm tired of us being defeated at the ballot. So we, as 30% of the state, need to give those independents someone that they can believe in, someone that they can vote for, someone that can flip the seat, and I believe I'm that man. So I'm Bill Hamlen. I'm asking for your vote because I want to take common sense, New Hampshire values to DC and help President Trump steer our nation back on track. Thank you.